Hello and good evening. Welcome, everybody. I'm Terry Kay of the Jewish Grandparents Network. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the power of grandparent-grandchild interactions, learning from and teaching each other. We are absolutely thrilled that our presenters tonight are master educators Allison Cook and Dr. Orit Kent. Allison and Orit will take questions throughout, so please use the chat freely, raise your Zoom hand, and more than that, we would just love your active participation. Just make yourself at home. A big thank you from me to Sarah Reed, our JGN colleague who is helping facilitate. And I would now like to introduce our presenters. Allison Cook and Dr. Orit Kent are founders and co-directors of the Pedagogy of Partnership, familiarly known as POP. Part of Hadar, POP is an innovative, research-based approach that re-envisions Jewish learning and cultivates the habits of wonder, empathy, and responsibility. Allison and Orit are longtime educators, educational researchers, and writers. Orit is the co-author of the award-winning book, A Philosophy of Havruta, and Allison is a 2023 recipient of the prestigious Covenant Award for Excellence in Jewish Education. With all our thanks, may I turn it over to you, Allison and Orit.
Thank you so much, Terry, for having us. We are thrilled to be here. I'm Orit Kent, and this is Allison Cook. And we are just so lucky that as Jews, we've inherited a beautiful tradition of relational learning, often epitomized by the practice of Havruta, two people learning together. And this practice is instructive for how we can learn and talk with one another. This is true when we think about learning and conversation between children and their grown-ups. And today, we're going to explore this particularly within the unique and wonderful relationship of grandparents and grandchildren. Out of our research, we've developed a practical model for how people learn together and talk with one another. We bring this model to learners of all ages, as well as educators, schools, and organizations. Tonight, we're going to explore this model, practice it with a classical Jewish teaching, and explore some tools from it for you to be able to use with your grandchildren. During the course of the evening, we invite you to participate in the chat and raise your electronic hand if you'd like to say something. We'll be calling on people to speak at different points through the program. And please feel free to put questions in the chat, and we will do our best to answer them in this session. We work on and have studied all sorts of relationships. In full disclosure, we are not grandparents yet. But we are very grateful for the example that our parents have set with our children and that our own beloved grandparents set with us. And whatever wisdom we're able to share this evening is in their honor.
To get us started, we want you to think about a time when you learned something from your grandchild. And please put in the chat something that you have learned from your grandchild to share with us. Amazing. We have sand castles, sand crabs, how to dig for them, names of transformers. This is knowledge we cannot live without. How to sort toys, love of cars, how not to embarrass my 10-year-old. That is a huge learning. Trucks and cars. Amazing. And what the name of 26 different dinosaurs. Yes. Amazing. Everyone should just read the chat as well, and just to see. I think what is amazing is from grandchildren, we can learn all kinds of things like about dinosaurs and trucks, and even correct Hebrew pronunciation. That's an amazing thing to learn from a grandchild. So there are actual things and skills that we might learn, but also there are habits or dispositions. People talked about in the chat a sense of wonderment and curiosity. So we want to kind of hold on to both things as we think about our relationship with our grandchildren today, both the actual stuff we can learn, but also the way of being in the world that we can learn from our grandchildren. And whenever we embark on learning and talking with others, like our grandchildren, it is always helpful to have a kind of compass to help us find our way and to orient ourselves to one another in a way that is grounding, but also leaves open those possibilities for spontaneity, creativity, and connection. And I want to share with you a framework that can serve as such a compass. This framework is what we call the Havruta learning triangle, which is instructive because it is the most intimate unit of learning in relationship. In fact, Havruta is an Aramaic word which comes from a root that means friend or companion. And this model helps us consider the potential of this relationship when it's just you, one other person, and some kind of Torah or text that you are learning together. So no matter how many people you may be learning with, let's say in your family, starting at this most intimate scale will help us learn how to orient ourselves. So in this case, this is what we're talking about today. A triangle that consists of three partners, a grandparent, a grandchild, and what we're calling a text. Some kind of third thing that we might be exploring together, like you wrote in the chat, like dinosaurs or trucks or anything like that can be a text. So we just want you to look at this triangle for a minute. You will notice that this is an equilateral triangle with three corners representing the three partners in the partnership, the two people and the text. And this other partner is not a person, but the text or story or any other thing that the partners can both point to or experience. In our framing, this subject matter is regarded as a full partner in learning and a full partner in the conversation. And we're going to kind of hold on to that idea as we go through this evening. So you may already be scratching your head or thinking about what this triangle could mean. So we'd like to give everyone a chance to think about it and its implications. So please we're going to open the chat again. And take a second to think about, what does each partner bring to the relationship? What does this framework suggest about the role of each partner? So consider what is the role of the grandparent, the grandchild, and the text or the thing that we are learning together. And just throw some ideas in the chat.
Just give us a minute. This requires a bit of typing.
For sure. Everyone can have some nice think time. Think about this equilateral triangle. Oh, there are some really beautiful things in the chat. When you're done typing, please take a look. Would anyone like to comment on what they put in the chat out loud and hear some other voices?
We'd love that. You can just unmute yourself. This is Terry speaking. You can just unmute yourself and speak if you'd like to share your observation.
My name is Leslie, and I love to share Hebrew/Yiddish words with my grandkids, and then turn around and hear them using them correctly, like schmutz or mishpucha. They got those two words down pretty well.
Amazing, thank you. And this is, you have a particular, in this case, an actual language to bring them and to teach them. Wonderful. Someone else want to jump in?
Yeah, from my perspective, one is each brings a perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And each brings perspective that can a certain way impact how you think and how you engage with the other. And I guess the other thing I'd say is that each brings a sense of mystery waiting to be discovered.
That is so beautiful. And I think in some ways, what we were talking about here tonight is how we can approach, grandparents and grandchildren can approach each other with a sense of wanting to uncover that mystery. What are the things that we can do to draw one another out and have a discovery of one another? Love that. And we see in the chat the gift of listening to each other. That all three partners are teachers and learners. Each has a perspective. Wonderful. One of the big ideas of our work, which you have expressed so beautifully in the chat and out loud, is this idea that we each have something to learn and we each have something to teach. And that is what makes this triangle able to come to life. And what we get to consider today is what is unique about the grandparent and grandchild relationship. So we want to ask you one other question about this triangle, and really would love to hear more ideas from all of you. Notice that this triangle suggests a balance among the partners. As grandparents, what attitudes could you bring to this Havruta relationship with your grandchild to help it come alive?
I think that the text provides an anchor for the discussion. And if we can use it to steer our comments toward the text, we will enrich the discussion. I know that it's so easy to get off track and the children just want to buzz along, but our relationships will be built strongly with a focus on the text as an anchor.
Thank you, and that is my mom. Thank you, Bubby. Thank you. And it's so wonderful to, I'm so glad, Mom, that you highlighted the idea of the text being an anchor that helps to connect each other, because that is a very big idea that this equilateral triangle has to offer us when we are interacting with grandchildren. I see, Susan, you wrote, a sweet and joyous, positive approach. That is something that you can bring. Oh, this wonderful note from Alice that grandparents need to be willing to say, I didn't know that, and allow the child to be the teacher.
Wow. Nice.
Beautiful, because in this equilateral balanced triangle, we are suggesting that everyone here is a teacher and everyone here is a learner, all at the same time. Would anyone else like to comment about this?
I'll comment. So I'm a relatively new grandparent, still getting used to that term.
Mazel tov.
But I said in the chat earlier, so our daughter had twins. They spent a month in the NICU. So even though we're sort of grandparents, we're more like parents because we're helping out. And I think that the relationship with our daughter and son-in-law is very interesting. But we're sort of not in the grandparent role right now. We're more parents and helping. And I think that obviously as time goes on, we'll maybe graduate into that role. But right now, with twins that were, in NICU for a month, so we're more just helping out, our daughter and son-in-law and getting another perspective on that relationship. So it's work, which is great. I mean, to do all this. So it's not the fun of, it's very exciting in a way. And we've seen all these, where hospital technology is and all of that and what was going on in the NICU. So it just gives you a whole other perspective rather than just that traditional view of, well, being the grandparent. And that'll come in years. But right now, she needs all the help that she can. But we're more parents to our daughter than grandparents to them. So I just wanted to add that.
So thank you for that perspective and how the roles grow and change and people can step into the roles that you're most needed for. Thank you. Did somebody else want to comment? Yes, please.
I just joined, so
Judith.
I just wanted to say that this idea of learning from the child. Just this morning, I had a FaceTime talk with my 7 and 9-year-old grandchildren, and I tried to share with them some work I was doing with refugees. I said, there's a guy coming and he's going to take a bicycle that I got him so he can find work. And I have a bed for him, but he doesn't have any transportation for it. And my grandson said to me, well, if you're helping him, then he doesn't know anybody. You should also find the transportation for the bed. And it was a remarkable moment because I'm always pushing them to be caring about newcomers. And I wasn't even sure they ever pay attention. And so I did what you said. What you've been saying is I really reinforced that. I said, that's such a great idea. And I'm doing that. And I will report back to him on the assignment he gave me. So I think it's a great thing that you just said. I mean, I hadn't made it conscious what had happened this morning until I heard what you just said about learning from them.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And also what is beautiful about your story is that exchange and how you plan to follow up is both teaching and learning something, both in the content of what you're doing, performing this mitzvah or good deed, and in the way that you and your grandchild are interacting together. So that is a very beautiful thing. I hope that people are looking in the chat to see what your friends here are writing from their experience. What the chat is reflecting many of these core attitudes that we can bring to these rich relationships with grandchildren. People talked about openness and listening, curiosity and wonder, a sense of empathy for our grandchildren, and also for the content that we're learning or studying, a sense of responsibility to one another, and this great balance, this challenge and opportunity of balance between a sense of humility and a sense of confidence. Humility in the face of our grandchildren, who may indeed have so much to teach us, but also the confidence to know that you too have something really valuable, many valuable things to teach your grandchildren, everything from Yiddish words to how to take care of refugees in our community, and the many, many skills and knowledge that people have. And we can model that. You can model that for your grandchildren.
Hi.
So, yes, hi.
Hi. I'm Shoshi.
Hi, Shoshi.
I was born in Israel. So what I bring for my grandkids, the language very strongly, and they keep asking questions how life in Israel. They've not been in Israel yet. My daughter, my 4 kids actually, every summer were in Israel, and they speak fluent Hebrew. And I spoke to them Hebrew, but as they grew older, they did not follow. And now that they're in this school, they get so proud to tell me, "Oh, Savta, I know these words. I remember," and they remember it. The pride of enriching their vocabulary in Hebrew. And for me, last Passover, when Sean read in the Agadah, he's a 3rd grader, it was heartwarming. So just to keep enriching them with the language, and soon probably also to take them to Israel to see how I grew up, how his mother, their mother, and that's very important.
That's wonderful. Thank you. They're getting Hebrew, and they're getting a lot of love with that.
Oh, yes.
Judith.
Yeah, I have a very different story to tell. My youngest grandson is at a Muslim daycare, which is right in my son's backyard. And the people there have been absolutely lovely. I mean, and one day my daughter-in-law said to me, "You should ask," his name is Jack, for Jack to tell you the prayer that he says before they eat lunch every day, which was so interesting to hear this child say that. But on the other hand, when I go to pick him up, I pick him up 3 days a week. And when they're outside, there's a fence, and he's surrounded by his friends, Ibrahim and all that kind of stuff. And one day, one of the boys asks me, is Jack Muslim? And I said, no. And I said, he's Jewish. And he sort of looked at me, he says, does he celebrate Halloween and things like that? And so I guess the point I just want to make is how introducing children at this very young age is, I think, the way to avoid some prejudice and to learn about other cultures and to mix together. And I was so reluctant when my son first did that, because actually the daycare is almost in their backyard, and so it just happens to be very convenient. I know all the teachers there know he's Jewish with a name like Jack Samuel, and they have absolutely been lovely, and it's been welcoming. And I just wish more of these kinds of things could exist in this world. We can appreciate each other and be at peace.
Thank you. Thank you. Amen. And how wonderful that Jack is having those experiences and learning new things that then you can ask Jack about to learn more as well. So just to wrap up this piece of this evening, I want you to think about that equilateral triangle, that balance, and those kind of attitudes that grandparents can bring into their encounters with their children, and the possibility of what happens when we have a text, something to learn. And think about, what does it do to your relationship with your grandchildren to think of it as a learning relationship? You learn things from them, they learn things from you, and you learn things together. So now I'm going to pass it to Orit to take it a step further.
So to explore this learning potential, we want to share with you a text from our own tradition that opens up this possibility. Next week is the holiday of Shavuot, where we celebrate the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai and read and study texts about revelation. So there is no better time to visit this text we are going to be sharing with you. We're going to put the file in the chat for the text. Please open the file when it goes in. And if not, we're going to be sharing it on screen so we can look at it together.
There is the file.
And if you're opening the file in the chat, scroll to page 2 where you see the text in Hebrew and in English. But also feel free to just look at the screen if that is easiest. So this text is a commentary from something called Midrash Rabbah, a collection that developed over the course of 8 centuries and all came together in the 16th century. And this text helps us imagine what is going on at the moment of revelation. And it's an amazing text that is playing with 2 different words that we will consider as we read it together. The word in Hebrew, one word is kol, which can mean a whole bunch of things. It can mean voice, thunder, blare, sound. Some of those meanings are very closely related, some are different. And the text is also playing with another important word, koach, which can mean strength or power or ability or vigor. So we're going to look at this together and bring the text's voice into this room, that third partner in the triangle we just looked at, by reading it out loud, just a couple of sections at a time. And after we read aloud a section, we will help each other notice what is in the text by sharing things we notice or things we wonder about. And we'll collect that in the chat and just ask for some elaborations. So let's begin by reading section A of this text. And I'll just read it for you to be able to listen and follow along. Come and see how the coal goes out to all of Israel, each according to their strength, their koach, the elders according to their strength, the youth according to their strength, the children according to their strength, the infants according to their strength, and the women according to their strength. So take a moment to put in the chat just what you notice or what you wonder about upon hearing or reading this text. And a word about noticing, you can really point out something obvious, like the text says come. This does not require any prior knowledge, but really by pointing to something in the text, you draw all of our eyes to a detail we might not have noticed or spent time thinking about. And it's part of the value of doing something together. So take a minute. Okay. So as you're putting the words, the noticings in the chat, is there someone who wants to just unmute to share their noticing or wondering out loud?
It doesn't matter how everybody's strength is. Everybody is welcome. So everybody with his own strength.
Thank you. Thank you, Shoshi. Great.
I love how it says, I know it's a translation, and even the pregnant women.
Oh, yes. And we haven't even gotten there yet, but yes, we are going to get there.
Sorry.
That is all good. No, we're trying to there's so much here, so we're just trying to slow it down. But yes, even. We will get to that word.
I wanted to say that the Cole, this revelation was interested in making sure that the different kinds of people, the demographic, were able to receive. They would have the strength to receive what was being given.
Right. Thank you. Oh, Sarah, was there more?
Yeah. And also how particularistic it is. It's not just the elders. They have the youth, the children, and the babies. So it's very important. Obviously, children, there's 3 categories of youth, and that's obviously it's an important aspect that they receive this information, because you have the elders and you have the women. Everything else are children, presumably under the age of 13. So clearly, children are very important.
Yeah, and we don't even know for sure what those ages are, but they're definitely very central. As you're noting, there are 3 different namings of children in this, and a whole range of ages and demographics, as a number of people noted in the text. And Serene's comment sort of calling out, everyone is strong in this, in a way. That is one noticing here. But there's different seeing. So we're gonna keep reading just to see how this theme gets drawn out further.
It also notes that there's a different strength of each. And actually, as we grow older, we go from category to category. So it also can mean like a capacity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for pointing to that. Just another way of understanding the term strength, and that we have that throughout our lives in different ways as we evince different capacities or developed new capacities. So Allison, do you want to read B and C together?
Sure.
And put your noticings in the chat as we're reading this.
And even Moses, according to his strength, as it says in Exodus, Moses would speak and God would answer him with a coal that he could hear. That he could bear, with a coal that he could bear. And so too it says, the coal, or the voice, perhaps, of God is powerful. Literally, bakoach means through strength. It did not say through God's strength, rather through strength, meaning through the strength of each and every person.
So take a minute to just put some noticings in the chat so other people can benefit from your gaze. And if you want to, there are a couple people who have not had a chance to speak up, who'd like to unmute themselves to just share a noticing or wondering. Robin.
Yeah,
Hi.
while reading this, it made me think a lot about the issue of the 4 sons in the Haggadah, because none of us are any one. And at different developmental stages in our lives, how we engage with the Jewish narrative and our story, it's vast and also based on our ability and our developmental stage. So
wonderful. Thank you. Muriel is pointing out in the chat this idea that the coal somehow might be heavy. Sometimes the voice is heavy. Sometimes our voices are heavy. Sometimes someone else's, and how there needs to be some then adaptation to be able to bear it. Any other noticings for this piece?
I was thinking about the fact that so it acknowledges the weakness in perspective of every person, no matter what stage of life that they're in, and it invites us to explore each other's perspective and, in a way, honor it. And I was also thinking, you know, it also the same person, youth, according to their strength, they have different strengths in one day or in one week. I know that sometimes I feel like such a wise old lady, and there are some days when I feel like I'm still 11 years old. So that depending on how vulnerable I feel or what situation I'm in. So I think our strengths are very pliable and circumstantial often, but the whole collection of strengths that each of us bear are worthy of expression and worthy to be heard.
Thank you so much for that. And there are so many things in what you just said, but just to hold up this idea that all of these different people listed, like that we have elements of those within ourselves. So we can be talking about actual different people, and we can also be talking about those different people within our own selves and the different strengths that we bring at a particular moment or hour or day, and that our grandchildren also bring. They're different from moment to moment. Let's just see the last couple lines. I'm going to come back to Susan Ringel. Allison, would you read?
And even the pregnant women according to their strength, that is to say, everyone according to their strength.
Susan, do you want to jump in?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it just jumped out at me. I guess I read ahead, but I agree with what everybody else is saying, and that this is just like repeat that, you know, no matter what category you fit in, the Torah is for every Jew, and it's a beautiful teaching.
Thank you. And just in this brief, and please take a look at the text and what is getting put in there. So many wonderful noticings and interpretations of what this is about. And that is kind of the point, that just beginning to do this little noticing and wondering exercise opens up a multiplicity of noticings and wonderings. And we just scratch the surface. But we each have a different way of noticing, a different voice, a different call. And we each have a strength to share. And this is such an essential message of our tradition that comes through so strongly at this momentous moment that this text is describing. And that is so important for us to be able to model as grandparents with our grandchildren and share with them. So this text talks about people hearing the voice in different ways. And we just wanted to open up the chat to, like, what is a strength you bring? And what is a strength your grandchild brings? And to just think about that for a moment and share with one another.
Think that the word voice, koach, the powerful voice, does not mean to have, you will be heard no matter what. Your voice does not have to be very loud or very low. You will still be heard with whatever you're saying or trying to tell.
Thank you, Shoshi. Yes, it's a different way of understanding, different ways to understand strength. Okay, so please take a minute to think about a strength that you bring and that's important to you that you bring, and a strength that your grandchild or grandchildren bring? I love, we bring a sense of energy with each other.
I'm sorry, I wonder if I could jump in without putting something in the chat.
Sure,
because
please.
I'm visually, I'm photophobic. It's hard to look at the screen.
Oh, please.
There are two things I want to say. One is that maybe I put this in there, but it felt to me like there's no understanding without the entire community hearing it according to their strength. Sort of flipping it around. And the other thing that popped in my mind is it's so easy to hand your grandchild your iPhone, can you do this, or the remote of the TV to do this. So I think we're always acknowledging their strength about that. It just should be a reminder to acknowledge their wisdom about other things. You know what I mean? Like every single day, probably each of us has said, could you show me how to do this on the phone? But it can't be that that's all they know that we don't know.
Yeah.
So it could be a reminder to each of us every time we do that to find out their other wisdoms.
Thank you so much, Judith. And really like highlighting that the strengths being in the plural, and part of our role is helping those that we're in relationship, our children, grandchildren, to help them uncover some of those strengths that they may be aware of, and sometimes they may not be aware of. But from our vantage point, we can see it. Thank you. Esther, I know you. Hello.
Hi. I just joined, so I didn't hear an entire conversation, but it is very motivating and very exciting to talk about that. You remind me, my 6-year-old grandson, he talks about strength, and the only one that he can imagine is the physical strength. So I am the little grandma that I don't have the strength anymore. And, everything is physical. Now, I never talk to him about the spiritual strength. And what I think is that the older we have less physical strength, but we become wiser. So I feel that it's very important to teach them that older people have a lot of pressures in their minds, and if they talk very slow and they think too much and it takes a long time, is because we have so many experiences, and this is actually a big strength. But what I feel really is that I try to I have 7 grandchildren, but I try to spend time with each of them because we exchange. I will read to them if they cannot read, but they will teach me how to play Nintendo. So, it's funny, and they have patience to talk to me slowly and explain to me. So I can understand what is important for them, and they understand what is important for me. But both of us, the grandson and the grandparent, have the strength of love. Yes. We exchange love all the time, and we are very strong about it.
That is so beautiful, and your grandchildren are so lucky. That love of a grandparent, there's nothing comparable. And I also just want to lift up this idea that we may be teaching our grandchildren patience was something I heard you talk about, but they're also in their own way teaching us patience for certain things. And there's something really beautiful about that. So I just want to also draw out one more point about strength that I think Judith was alluding to, that it's not just about each individual strength, but it's the koach of the strength of drawing out and listening to another's unique voice. Like that is an important aspect of strength. And as we draw out others' unique voices, there are echoes of revelation that we bring to one another. And that is something that we can model for our grandchildren. And I want to turn it back to Allison now.
Yeah, thank you. When the way that we together in this webinar opened up this text for each other and brought out such beautiful ideas about strength and how grandparents and grandchildren can need each other to expand and open up each other's worlds and discover that mystery that we talked about before. You just experienced a little learning routine, a little conversation routine that we want to highlight for you that you can use, or we can kind of remind you to use with your grandchildren. And basically, this is what we just did. We introduced a text. In this case, it was a classic Jewish text, but it could be many different things that you can both look at or experience together. Perhaps even a song or something in your shared environment, like if you're taking a walk. A tree could be a text that you're both noticing and looking at together. So for the purpose of just thinking through this routine very briefly, I just want everyone to visualize yourself with one of your grandchildren and think about what is a text that you could imagine exploring with them. A picture book, a song, a classical Jewish text, something in the environment. Just picture that in your mind. And if you like, you can put it in the chat. A puzzle, great. Helping others. A garage door and how it works, for sure. All of these different kinds of things we can explore, and of course storybooks and videos and memes and YouTubes and all kinds of stuff. So just picture that and then ask. You look at number 2 of the learning routine. Like first you introduce a text of any kind. It's that, as Susan was saying before, it grounds the conversation so that you can both look at it. It opens up that triangle. And all you kind of need to do is just say, what do you notice? And what do you wonder? And just take turns noticing and wondering and noticing and wondering. And that gives way to all kinds of discussion. And it turns out that just by doing that, there is some strength and a mystery that you can discover together. And then just the last part of the simple routine is just sharing appreciation of what you learned from your grandchild and expressing love. And I just want to say that if your grandchildren are teens, this still works, but a key difference might be that instead of you identifying that text, just to make sure that you draw out what your teens have to offer. What is the text that they might be interested to bring and to ask them about that? And also to draw them out, to ask them to tell me more about that. What do you think? And then begin the I notice and I wonder. I want to just share for a second that I want to give an example of a quick way that one can create these triangle relationships with a quick little text, especially if you don't live in the same place as your grandchild. So Mom, I'm going to give the example of the daily bub. So my mother, who my children and my brother's children call Bubby, during the pandemic, decided to sort of keep everyone together. She created a group chat on the phone with all of the grandchildren who were old enough to have a phone. So this is great for teens. And just every day, my mother, she sends a little meme, a little cartoon, a little saying, some random thing that she finds from the internet somewhere, and just puts it in the chat. And then the kids, they kind of respond. They don't always respond, and there's no need to respond and no judgment. But what that does is very often it creates an entire conversation where the kids comment and interpret, and it takes 2 seconds, but it is holding this relationship together in a meaningful way. And the cousins, some of whom are now 20 and some are 11 or 12, get to be in this Havruta all together with my mother, their grandmother. And the best thing about it probably is that there are no parents allowed in this chat. It is just the kids and the grandparents. And the only time I ever hear about it is when my mom says, we had this most amazing conversation together about this random thing. And all kinds of wonderful things are discussed. So that's just a very modern approach to like a little text that could take 2 seconds, but creates that relationship. So we just wanted to offer that as an example and thank my mom for having initiated this, which is now like 4 years running or since the pandemic. It's pretty amazing. Okay, Orit, is there something that you wanted to add about that?
Let's look at these little speech phrases for just a moment, because in addition to the routines, these phrases are another way for generating and deepening conversations, and just helping us to open up a conversation and kind of lean into curiosity for ourselves. So something like attentive silence doesn't mean something isn't being communicated. It just means things are being communicated in ways other than words. And there is something so important just cultivating that sense of being present with one another, which young people don't necessarily have, whether even, if that together is being on screen and being paid attention to together. And also cultivating a shared attention, where we're looking together with a young person at something or listening to music together. I know someone commented on that in the chat. And like silently sharing attention together is really something beautiful to be able to give grandchildren. Things like, tell me more, is a phrase that is often received in a more invitational way than why, which can sometimes be received as we're trying to interview you. But tell me more is just a way of saying, oh, I want to learn. And tell me in whatever terms you want. I just want to know a little bit more. And we see remarkable things happen with that simple phrase. And just when in doubt, you can really keep going back to, I notice. What do you notice? I really want to learn. So these things seem very small, but they really do have a huge impact at conveying both our appreciation and love for our grandchildren and for opening up the conversation. So please just take a minute and think about one of these that you don't use very much, but you want to try using in your conversations with your grandchild or grandchildren. And just put the letter in the chat so we can see sort of the range here. Is there another way of understanding that? Or here's another way of understanding that. Great, I know. Wonderful. Good. A lot of we're gonna send these out. And again, the more that we use these with our grandchildren, the more opportunities there are for noticing and learning together.
Can I just say something?
Please do.
You know, I love this very much, the list. What strikes me, it also depends so much the tone of voice that we say it in.
Yes.
You know, to make sure that it's welcoming and more like the strength, what you were saying before. Is
right.
What, you know, because the tone will convey as much as the words. So.
Thank you so much for saying that and for connecting it back to our shared text of how we consider how we show strength, what that can mean. Thank you. Yes, it's super important. As our time together is drawing to a close, we just want to, you know, invite you to really hold on to this idea that you and your grandchildren can be a Havruta together, learning partners and friends. And take a moment to look at these intentions here and just jot down a note for yourself to take with you about one that you want to try to carry with you into your relationship with your grandchild, or that you already do, but you just want to sort of set the intention of it.
And I'll just read them out loud in case it's difficult to see. The first one coming out of this Havruta relationship is, I have something to learn and I have something to teach. The second is, my grandchild has something to teach me, and I may need to listen carefully and support them to be a full partner with me in learning. And C, through learning with my grandchild, we may open up possibilities for coming to greater understanding and appreciation of one another, as well as so many different things that we can be learning together, from Torah to dinosaurs.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Allison, Orit, thank you very, very much for joining us tonight, for leading us in this beautiful exploration of our relationships and our interactions with our grandchildren. And to our friends who came, our JGN community, we are especially grateful. I think this was the most vocal, articulate audience participants we've had in a really long time. We so appreciate how much you contributed to the discussion. Tomorrow morning, we will send you a follow-up email. It will have the slides in it. It will have the recording for people who weren't able to attend, or for you who would, if you'd like to share it with friends. And we just want to say thank you for your support and for being part of the JGN community. Allison and Orit, thank you again for inspiring us. And to everybody, we wish you a good night.